Smoak. Texas High School Football Hall of Fame class of 2022 inducted. Coming up on Saturday at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. And Rodney Allison, Odessa High, Texas Tech. And now he is, in fact, Texas Tech Letterman's organization's the Double T Varsity Club director. Joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Get the guns up, Rodney, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm still doing it after all these years, so I guess it's good. And we're glad to be on with you guys.
Well, I remember you when you played at Texas Tech. There's no question about that. But what does this mean as far as what you did at Odessa and also your high school career to be a part of the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, or the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame this weekend?
Well, Paul, I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell a little story Saturday night. I was about 11 years old, and I'll never forget it to this day. I was under my blanket at home listening to a transistor radio when I was 11 of Jack Mildren at Abilene Cooper and playing Austin Reagan in the state championship game. And that, how big that was and how big Jack Mildren was, and just that whole scenario of Texas high school football and the state championship. It was just, it was a dream for a little kid to be able to even play high school football, and to go into the Hall of Fame is just, it's an incredible deal to be a part of such a great history and great tradition and great players and coaches. It's the best high school ball in the country.
You were a part of a district they called the Little Southwest Conference. Things have changed quite a bit with where people are as far as districts, even classifications. What was that like to be a part of that district named the Little Southwest Conference?
Yeah, I played in both Southwest conferences, and
yep.
the thing I would equate it to, Craig, would be, and I was very fortunate. I've had a chance to coach college football for a long time, and I was in the SEC for about 6 years at Auburn. And it's pretty much like that, just on a high school level, that everybody you play, you better bring your big boy pants. And it's just a competitive elite league back then. And just like I think pretty much the Southeastern Conference is today. And it was a great league, great competition, and probably the best coaches in the state to a certain degree.
You were recruited by a lot of people. You ended up playing for Coach Carlin at Texas Tech, but can you try to describe, and I've heard this from somebody else that played back in the day, your recruiting, the visit, and Darrell Royal, and even Spike Dykes, who was at Texas at the time, trying to get you to change your mind?
Yeah, I love Coach Dykes and Coach Royal, but I tell you what, I love Coach Taft, too. Coach Taft and Baylor were probably in my last three. I really enjoyed Baylor, and I enjoyed Coach Taft, and had an opportunity to see him here in Lubbock the other day, but I guess the story you're referring to, I pretty much grew up wanting to go to Texas and play for the Longhorns, but I finally decided to go to Tech. And back then, the head coaches could be anywhere the night before signing date, and there were several pretty big coaches driving around my block waiting to talk to me. And Darrell Royal knocked on the door, and the assistant at the time was Spike Dykes. So Spike was basically the coach that was recruiting me, and they knocked on the door, and I went back to the bedroom. And I ain't telling these dudes I ain't telling Darrell Royal I'm not coming to Texas. And my dad walked back there and said, "Get your butt out of that room. You're going in there and be a man and tell these guys what you're going to do." And so I went in there and told them I was going to go to Tech and play for Coach Carlin at Tech. So it was a pretty neat story. But I always thought the world of Coach Royal and Spike Dykes.
Is that kind of like when you're in high school and you want to get a friend to break up with a girl for you so you don't have to do it? Was that the same thing?
It's a lot the same thing. You just slip them a note under the door and get out of there.
Coach, you talking about college coaches driving around like almost like vultures, like waiting to come and talk to you. Reminds me of Barry Switzer, like you said, when coaches used to be able to, I guess, be in contact the night before, basically parking a car in front of a hotel room that was housing Billy Sims the night before to make sure that he could not go anywhere and nobody could get to him either.
Well, Coach Switzer was one of those coaches that was driving around the block. I liked Oklahoma too.
The story.
It's a different world we live in. It's just changed dramatically. I mean, it's just unbelievable things that have changed in it. But there was a lot of stuff going on back then too. So
You played the quarterback position, but one of the things I always remembered about you, and of course this was also, that's, you're just a little bit slightly, I'm 63 years old, but the shoulder pads you wore as a quarterback, do you see now, basically it almost seems like they don't even have any?
They don't have nothing on, and they wonder why they stay hurt all the time. But everything's built for speed and agility and movement and all that stuff now, and probably technology has got a lot more to do with it than anything, but it's just a different ball game now than it was back then. And it's a lot more physical, faster, bigger, stronger. I mean, we had a weight room back in that day it was a universal gym, and you'd get on the machine and do 10 of that certain exercise. They'd blow a whistle and you'd go to the next deal. It's just a totally different game now than it was back then.
What are your thoughts of the momentum that it appears that Joey McGuire has brought to Lubbock from Baylor after he was an assistant coach? He's going in fact, to the class as well for his time in high school at Cedar Hill. What is it like right now as they've just wrapped up spring drills, getting ready for his first year as a head coach there?
I've been back 10 years, Paul, and this probably is big of the most excitement that Tech's had in football here probably since Kliff Kingsbury's first year. And people love Joey because, at first when you meet him, you go, can he be for real? And what you find out about him, he's the same exact way every single day, treats everybody great recruiter. And, I've had with what I do, and for a lot of people out there that don't know, I do the same thing here that Walter Abercrombie does there at Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I've gotten to know Coach McGuire because I travel with him and stuff. And I'll tell you a quick, interesting story. We were about 3 days after he got the job, Kirby Hocutt calls me and said, will you drive Joey to Midland to meet some donors and meet some former players? I said, sure, I'll drive him. So we're two old ball coaches driving down the road, going to Midland. And he said, yeah, I got this deal on May 7th in Waco. And, he took a phone call, I think, trying to recruit or something. Then he gets off the phone. I said, well, Coach, I got a deal in Waco on May 7th also. And that's how we found out that we were both going in to the High School Football Hall of Fame together. And it's really kind of cool. Two people in a car driving down the road that didn't know each other hardly. And it's just really an ironic moment, and one that I'll always remember.
You are part of a team at Tech. You started there 3 years. You are part of a team that went 10-2, I think, in '76. You beat Texas, and I think lost in Nebraska in the bowl game. Was that the highlight of your career, or was there something different?
No, probably that year for sure, because that was one of probably the great years, top 4 or 5 years in Tech history. And a lot of people won't remember this. We beat Texas, and you say that, but Earl Campbell got hurt in the third quarter. I'm not sure that would have happened.
Yeah.
That dude, he still may be the best football player. And I coached at Auburn and Clemson and different places across the country. He still may be the best football player, period, that I've ever seen. But the 76 game against Texas and that 10-2 year, and that was a great moment. One that I'll never forget.
He's as good as there's ever been, no question about it. Rodney, you know how college athletics has changed in many ways. We just had Todd Berry from the American Football Coaches Association. Of course, you mentioned Grant Taff. He ran that for many, many years prior. Oh, yeah. What are your thoughts about what's happening right now? And the players getting what apparently is out there, but your thoughts about, is it a little bit too wide open, or do you have no problems with it?
Well, since you mentioned Coach Taff again, his grandson is on the coaching staff here with Coach McGuire.
Yep.
And so I've gotten a chance to meet him and be around him some. But, Paul, most of this I don't like very much. I mean, it's not what I envision college football being without some kind of guidelines or rules or regulations on the NIL and how that was implemented and the different avenues that people are pursuing to kind of, I guess you'd say, doing their own thing to recruit players now. And I'd like to see some regulations on it. And the transfer portal, I guess kids have always transferred, but it's a totally different animal now than it was before. And I'm not opposed to players having the option to leave if the coach leaves, but I just think there needs to be some rational thought put into it and some different rules and regulations put in to police this a little bit.
Who was a bigger 800-pound gorilla as an opponent, Odessa Permian or Texas?
You're going to be shocked when I say probably Permian back then.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't beat – when I was at Odessa High, they were nearly – I think in 73, my senior year, the year before, they had won the state championship, I believe. And we played one of the great games in I think, Texas high school history. Permian beat us 41-36 in front of whatever 20-something thousand there in Odessa, and typical lineup to get tickets for 3 days. Just that atmosphere that, I'm not sure there's a lot of that goes on now in a lot of football areas, but it was just one of the great games I've ever been involved in, and even throughout my college career. But it's not very far behind that Texas win, and I was lucky I got to coach at Auburn, and we, the Alabama games and Florida and Georgia. I mean, I've been in some big games, but none as big as that Texas game and that Permian game when I was in high school.
You will be inducted on Saturday. I asked you what it means to you. Have you thought yet what you're going to say? Is that something you're going to try to go off, just kind of wing it, or are you going to have some bullet points?
I'm one of these guys that gets up. I can talk pretty good, but those deals like that make me fairly nervous. But I've been putting some thoughts together, and I'm going to talk about Dick Winder. I don't know if y'all remember Dick Winder, and I'm going to talk a little bit about him. He was my high school coach and very, very influential in my coaching career and so forth. And Texas Tech. I'm going to talk about Texas Tech. They've been great to me, and it's been a great ride. And I'm going to work one more year at Tech, and I'm going to call it quits. And the Tech's been very, very good to me.
See you Saturday. And, Rodney, thanks for your time. We appreciate you being flexible with our time today.
I do a radio show here in Lubbock, so I totally understand.
I can easily see you doing a talk show. I don't think that's good for you, man. Thank you, Rodney. Appreciate your time, buddy.
See y'all Saturday.
Rodney Allison, former Texas Tech quarterback, Southwest Conference MVP in 1976, the year they went 10-2, and part of Odessa High. He's going to represent the 1960s, the decade into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame. Coming